Three, two, one. And we're in. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for coming by the studio.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a while since we've been chatting about you coming by, but it's great that you're here today because obviously we're going to kind of get into a pretty heavy topic, I think, and that is gun violence.
Yes, that is a pretty heavy topic.
That is an understatement. I mean, I think when you grow up in the United States of America, especially in Los Angeles, especially in various parts of Los Angeles, kind of gun violence is something that everyone has to grow up with or come to some kind of realization. And for me, it's been very strange because I've only lived in LA for about 9 months now. I've lived abroad my whole life. I was born in Canada, then lived in China. So I've only been here for 9 months, but I'm trying to like come up to speed with what it's like living in LA and connecting with various people. And obviously your story is very important.
Again, thank you. And when you just said what you said, something clicked, and I never thought about it with growing up with gun violence in Los Angeles County, to be exact. I'm born and raised in Pasadena. My grandmother stayed in Los Angeles, so LA, Pasadena, it's all the same thing.
Yeah. And so what was it, I mean, we'll get into your story and the passing of your daughter, of course, and the recent film and your involvement in that, but maybe we can go back a few steps and we can kind of get into, what it was like for you growing up in Pasadena and Los Angeles and what life was like, in your days, and then we can get into maybe a little bit more about what it's like now.
Okay.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up in Pasadena and LA?
Growing up in Pasadena, it was great. I didn't experience anything with gun violence until maybe I want to say, I guess if you say 13 or 14 as teenage years, my grandmother stayed in LA and I had a cousin. He was killed. And just when I was talking to you, it clicked because I think I blocked it out and I didn't realize it until just now. And it just something clicked, and I was younger when he was killed. He had to be about, I was maybe 12, so he had to be about 13 or 14. He was killed in Los Angeles on Gage Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget my uncle and his mom, and that was something that I guess I always blocked out until literally just now when you said that. So you just brought something up that I had not so much forgot about, but trauma, you kind of tend to block certain things out. And even in my later teenage years when I lived in Rialto, one of my good friends, he was killed. And so again, it was something that I guess that lied dormant, and you just sitting here, mind you, dealing with the trauma that I've been through with my daughter, but something that has never, I guess, came out in all my conversations that I've had in all my interviews. So you just unpack something that no one else has been able to unpack.
Well, I wish it was a happier memory, yeah, but we try, and I don't know. I think when you've been through something as difficult as you have been through, I think anything that's kind of attached to that, I think you just kind of park away somewhere in the back of your brain. I'm not a therapist or a psychiatrist or a doctor, but I've talked to enough people to understand a little bit about the human condition, perhaps. But that's terrifying that at the age of 12 or 13 you can lose a cousin to gun violence. Yeah.
And he wasn't a gang member.
So just caught up in innocent, like just what do they call it, collateral damage, or just kind of in the middle of something that is someplace he wasn't supposed to be, or some complete accident?
He was I'll never forget, he was on his way home from, I want to say, I think he was coming from the store.
Oh, really?
And it was in the evening time. So mind you, I'm 49 now, and my memory is kind of, but I'll never forget in the hurt and pain. But even now, like driving past that way in certain songs, and I'll look over there at the house, and I'm like, wow, And so it was that was the first time I experienced someone being taken to gun violence, because you never tell a person whose loved one that been murdered that their child or their loved one was lost, because to me that's important. Words are important. So when someone's life has been taken to senseless gun violence, you never say lost to a person. So I always tell people they were taken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a much better way to describe it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they just take your life and then that's it. And it's crazy that something as innocent as going grocery shopping or going to the corner store can lead to someone's life being taken, and someone so young, like not even old enough to have a driver's license or vote or have a drink of alcohol. That's a true shame.
Yes, and he was his mother's only child. So, my uncle was married to his mom, but they were together forever. Well, not forever, but and that was my cousin. So yes, and then like I said, my friend, we grew up together, went to school together, and he was killed in Rialto, and that was. Thinking about that. He didn't have kids or anything, but we went to school together, and that was traumatizing as well. So,
is there any difference for the people out there listening who might not live in Los Angeles or understand Los Angeles? Los Angeles is like a mega city of like 10 different cities, and it's sometimes hard to understand where Beverly Hills is or where Pasadena is, where Venice is. But actually, all of this kind of is in LA County. Do you see any difference in gun violence or perceived danger in some parts of LA County versus other parts of LA County?
I do, because it's always said that it happens in the ghettos.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wasn't raised in the ghetto.
No, Pasadena is supposed to be quite nice, right?
And there's a lot of murders. If you look it up, there's a lot of murders in Pasadena and Altadena. So gun violence doesn't have a what do you want to say, economic price on it. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in Beverly Hills. But so society tries to say it only happens in the Black and brown communities where people are poor. But now if you look what happened in Newport Beach. That older lady was out here visiting, and her life was taken. So it doesn't happen just in the ghettos.
No.
It doesn't happen just where there's drugs and things like that. Pasadena's a nice area. That's the Rose Parade. Altadena, in our backyard, you can look in our backyard. JPL was in our backyard. So the Jet Propulsion Lab, you would see the spaceships, or the rockets. I'm sorry, not spaceships. But, so that stigma is really, to me, I find it's sad, because they always try to use it as the ghetto or the poorest people, and that's not true. Gun violence can happen anywhere, and it's not just in LA County. And so you can go to Venice. Is supposed to be nice. People look at Venice Beach, and that's tourist. My daughter was killed on the boardwalk.
Yeah. I mean, a place that thousands of people go every weekend to enjoy the outdoors and skateboard and play basketball and get ice cream. And that's, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's not all what it's cracked up to be. Beverly Hills, crime happens there. Mm-hmm. Newport Beach. There's areas that people say, oh, we don't have crime. These things don't happen. Well, you might want to go back and look, because times have changed, and crime, especially gun violence, it's on the rise. And many people are losing their lives to gun violence, whether it's someone's child getting a hold to a gun that was not locked up, whether it's someone being bullied at school, taking a gun, going and it's sad. And I think for me, the society that this next generation has to grow up in, if we don't educate more people on the impact of gun violence and gun safety, we're not saying you can't have guns, but have them. Maybe if you're going to have them to protect yourself, maybe have them stored and locked and things like that. But the way people are breaking into people's houses and taking their belongings and things like that, people want to feel safe. So they feel like I need a gun. Mm-hmm. So if you come in my house, you may want to think twice. And that's where people's mentalities are, or they're afraid and they feel like they have to carry a weapon, but gun violence, it's really plagued not just Los Angeles County. If you look, it is a world epidemic, and it happens everywhere. Look in other states. Look, not only that, look in other countries. It's just not here in Los Angeles, and the media would have us to believe that, but that's not true.
So I grew up in Canada, in Toronto, and I do remember there were quite a lot of acts of gun violence in my college days, and because we were downtown in the city center, and there would be some petty crime and things like that might have gone wrong, and then someone pulls a gun and someone gets shot. There were some stories about things like that, but then I moved to China, and I lived in China for 18 years, and China has no private gun ownership at all, zero. So it was incredibly safe from a gun violence perspective. And then after that, I moved to Dubai. I lived in the United Arab Emirates for a few years, and again, there's also no private gun ownership in the UAE. So again, no gun violence there. Now, and then to come to the United States now for the first time. Obviously, I've been visiting the United States for over 40 years, but to come and actually live here and have the chance to speak to people and to realize like how big a problem there is with gun violence, and how easy it is to get a gun. Like when you think about getting a car or a driver's license, you have to take classes, you have to pass a test, you have to have a government issued ID. But it seems like if you want to buy a gun, you can go to any gun fair anywhere and pick one up out of the back entrance or back exit, and for some cold hard cash, and you've got a gun. And that makes no sense to me. Like, why isn't there some kind of better program to get people educated about using a gun? And what does it say about the government when people need a gun to protect themselves from other citizens? Because isn't that the role of government, is to protect us all from each other and kind of balance it all out and make it so that our society works? I mean, it's I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
And that is supposed to be the role. However, we have people in office that aren't making the right decisions when it comes to some of these gun laws. But not only that, you can go and get a gun because there's those ghost guns. You can go online and figure out how to make a gun, and you have these websites and things like that. And I think honestly, the government and other entities need to be held responsible, because there's no reason that a felon should be able to go and purchase a gun. It's no reason, or not so much even purchase it. These gun stores, if you look, a lot of cities, especially Burbank, there's so many gun stores in Burbank.
Really?
Yes, sir. Oh. There's a lot of gun stores in Burbank, but even other stores, but I know Burbank in particular only because I worked in Burbank. But there's a lot of gun stores there. And just, you would think that it would be a lot tougher to purchase a gun. But again, it's not. And like I said, you can go online and get these parts, and you can go online somewhere and somebody's selling you a gun. And that gun, you don't know if that gun is stolen. They're not requiring any license checks or anything. And I don't think it's fair to even get a cell phone. They do a credit check.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But to get a ghost gun, you have these people that are just manufacturing these guns. And you can tell the difference because I learned this going through my daughter's trial, but where they were showing the difference between certain guns and how the numbers are supposed to be in certain places. I didn't know any of this.
Like the serial numbers?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ghost guns out here, and the law enforcement, they're doing a lot of different traffic stops, and they're finding a lot of ghost guns and a lot of people with guns that don't belong to them. People's guns are being taken, and some people don't even know that their guns are missing.
That's right, yeah. If you keep your gun in a locker and you lock it or close it and you don't check on it for a year, you wouldn't even know it's gone. But actually maybe your house has been robbed or someone came in quietly just to take a gun, right? That happens all the time around here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think growing up with gun violence is one thing when you're worried about your own personal safety. But then, of course, if you have children and you have a family, then that fear is probably increased significantly. I don't have children, but you had a daughter, and I guess there must have been a lot of constant fear about her safety. And I mean, what was that like raising a daughter in a community where that has become all too familiar with gun violence?
Well, I have two daughters. Kai was 28. Well, she was 28, and then Cameron was 19. I didn't really, honestly, it wasn't really a thought, because for me, and you may say I was maybe living in a cloud, but I just never thought it would hit my household. And that's, I think, for a lot of us, and not saying that I thought I was exempt from it, but that was, I think, for me, the last thing that I thought was my daughter's life was going to be taken due to senseless gun violence. I thought maybe she would have died because she had a defibrillator in her heart. But you could have never told me gun violence. So for me, a gun was nothing. Never I even thought of having in my home. And the reason being is because I have a temper, and I just never want to hurt anybody. And so I've never owned a gun. My grandmother owned a gun, and she stayed by herself, little lady. She didn't play. She didn't want to go in her house.
Yeah.
But she kept it locked up, but that was something, and I never even thought about was having a gun, because I had kids, and even if it was locked up, maybe you couldn't get it to it in time if somebody came in your home. So maybe I was thinking, oh, I can call 911, or maybe, we can fight them off. But that was never even a thought. I just, okay, I'm going to pray and God is going to make everything okay. And I'm being honest with you. But for people who own guns and want to be able to purchase them and have them in their homes, I think that, living in this society, people want to be safe and they want to protect themselves. And being able to have a gun in their home, that's their right. Mm-hmm. But again, with how society is, it's been very challenging, and it makes you afraid to want to even be in your own home, because what if somebody comes to your house and you can't protect your family?
Yeah, it's a terrifying feeling.
And it really is, and I always thought before, after my daughter was killed, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to get a gun. Maybe these people know where we live at. So if they come here, then this is going to be their reality. But then I said, I'm raising my granddaughter. I never want a gun in my home. And it's not gonna, maybe the police can come quicker. And, I don't want anybody to go through the same thing that I'm going through, whether they're coming in my home or not. You just don't. Gun violence is not good, and it hurts a lot of people. It doesn't just hurt the families that have been impacted. It impacts the community. And that, for me, that's the biggest challenge.
I think just as an aside, I was sitting chatting with a friend last week here on the podcast, and he was saying that for the first time ever, he bought a gun during COVID because people were rioting in the streets during COVID because of the lockdowns and the mandatory lockdowns, and people were stealing from shops and looting and burning stores and stuff like that. And the police weren't doing anything about it. They were just letting them loot because they said, let's just let them get it out of their system, and then we'll slow them down later or something like that. And he went out and bought a gun right away because he's like, if the police aren't going to stop these people from looting and breaking into all these shops and terrorizing, normal people who are just trying to make a living, then he felt like he needed to have a gun in his home to protect his family. And that idea is so foreign to me because, again, living in Canada, it never really came up. And then living abroad, every country around the world has different gun laws. And I just randomly chose to live in countries that didn't have any gun violence or any private ownership. So coming here and seeing people who grow up with gun violence like yourself, where you'd lost a cousin at a young age, and then now your daughter, it's terrifying to see like the kinds of choices that people who live here have to make, whether you're going to decide to defend your own family or you're going to rely on the police. And there's always these stories about kids getting their hands on guns and accidentally shooting each other because the parents have guns at home and they don't lock them up properly, or the kids know the combinations, or the parents forget to lock. It's just terrifying all around. Like, it would be so much easier if there just weren't any guns at all. I mean, but then it's a Second Amendment, and then you've got all these political issues. But it's just you're right. Like, it just affects too many people in such a negative way.
And it does. And then not only that, I think back prior to my daughter's life being taken, I had another cousin, and he was killed right before her, and he was killed on the freeway. Again, not a gang member, and
he was shot. He was shot on the freeway.
He was killed on the 210 freeway, and traffic was backed up, and that was that hit close to home. Really close to home, because it was just seeing my aunt go through that and the effect that it had on her, and then my cousin, and then we were close, and so just to have, growing up, because once I got older, gun violence, seeing people in your family life being taken due to gun violence, then that was something totally different, because once I got older, then it seemed like it was just, I don't know, like the norm. And it was every time you turn around. And so on my dad's side of the family, I've had maybe 8 or 9 family members that have been murdered.
Oh my God.
And so it was, but you never understand it, or it never really hits you until it hits you, and it really affects you like directly. And just to know the pain, that a person goes through, but for people to not feel safe. If you're driving on the freeway, think about this, and there's a shooting. There's been many innocent people on freeways, and people with mental illness. I'm going to give you a perfect example. A lot of things that are going on now are stemming from mental illness because of trauma. Trauma plays a really big part in a lot of things that are going on in our society. If it's not dealt with when they're at a young age, they grow up in it. How they say, don't bleed on someone that didn't hurt you. And so that's what's happening in society. A lot of things are going on, and the trauma has not been dealt with as a child. And so they grow up and they make these bad choices, and then innocent people end up paying for their choices. And so if you're on the freeway and you're driving, and somebody may be chasing somebody, or they may snap just for no apparent reason, somebody's life could be taken. Who wants to be driving home and never make it home, all because of someone had a mental breakdown, or seen a car you were driving and decided, oh, I wanted that, or followed you home from a store.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to imagine because, you know, like when you think of human beings and where we've come from in our thousands of years of evolution, it kind of feels unnatural that we all live in a city of like 30 million people, like LA County, for example, right? And I know like Atlanta is very big, and New York City with all the boroughs is also a huge city too. But the pressure that we're all under living together like this and having to trust each other on a daily basis to just do the basic things like go to work, provide for our families, go grocery shopping, you know, all these things that we all have to do. You know, it just seems like that is under so much pressure because of maybe it's financial situation, maybe again, like you said, childhood trauma, mental health illnesses, and then take that city of 30 million people with all that stress and all that pressure and potential mental illness issues, and then introduce guns into that mix. It just seems like a totally toxic environment.
And it is. It is. How can you give somebody a weapon and mentally they're not there? I just, don't get it. But again, people don't know when someone is purchasing a gun or when they're buying a ghost gun, whether or not they're mentally unstable. They're thinking, oh, this person is buying a gun. But when you're buying it on the black market, they don't care. They just, okay, I got a gun, people, oh, you got a gun for sale. All they worried about is money, making the next dollar. And we're so caught up in, the finances. That's another thing, as you stated. We have a real financial, a lot of people are in financial bondage, and that also plays another part. So if somebody feels like, okay, I'm going to make these guns and I'm going to sell them for a little or nothing, okay, there's my money and I don't care who's going to be hurt in the long run, whether it's a little kid getting that gun and going to hurt another child. They don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they've already made their money and they've kind of checked out of what their responsibility of selling that gun could mean. Yeah.
But they don't have responsibility. You have to remember that. When those people, especially the ones who are selling these ghost guns and making them illegally, they don't have a responsibility because they don't care. Because if they did, they would do it the correct way, and people would have to go through all the channels of getting the background checks and things like that. But instead, you look on the internet, you go on Instagram, or you talk to your friend in as they say in the hood, oh, do you have a gun? I need to buy a gun. And so that's what they call it. And they have so many names in the different neighborhoods for these guns, And so that's the reality that a lot of kids are growing up in, but not just kids, even adults who are trying to adult.
Mm-hmm. Just trying to get through life. Like, life is fucking hard enough without having to worry about getting shot or having one of your family members get shot.
That's right, because a lot of people decide to take things in their own hands and, street justice. But again, like I say, it doesn't do anybody any good to, we all lose at the end of the day. Guns are meant to protect. Guns aren't meant for people to go out here and start just, okay, I want to kill this person today. But again, you have to also remember, a person doesn't just wake up and say, I want to be a murderer. There's trauma there. There's some things that are going on, and we have to try to figure out what can we do as a society, and with these different programs that need to be implemented. We have to figure something out, because otherwise none of us are safe. Nobody's family is safe.
And I feel like mental health in this country specifically, well, I think most countries don't get it right, but this country specifically, I think mental health is really not talked about and really not addressed. And then I was also reading a little bit about this because I've done a few interviews with people about gun violence. Like, when you do a background check, if you do have mental health issues, sometimes it doesn't show up because your medical records are private, and the privacy issues around your medical records are sometimes not allowed to be accessed by third parties. So sometimes if you're doing like a background check on a weapon, if you do have healthcare or mental health issues, like the people who are doing the background check might not ever know because your medical records are like that just makes obviously privacy is very important, but not in a situation where other people could be harmed.
And that's true. And I think that you bring up a valid point. I think that is something, if they're going to allow people to purchase guns, that should be something that should be a question that is asked. Yes, HIPAA protects us from our medical history, but also there should be something on there to where, okay, they should be able to look into some portion of it, not being able to dive super deep, but okay, if this person has, had mental health issues, there should be some kind of flag on there or something, not to where the gun stores are able to see, okay, well, this person has schizophrenia, this person, suffers from depression. No, but there should be something on there where, when it comes to the mental health component, where there should be some kind of something on there that, okay, a check may come up, and then that's a red flag to the gun store to say, okay, well, you know what? Maybe we may not want to sell this person a gun. Or there should be something to where it says they should be liable, especially knowing, okay, if that portion of that application was checked and you seen that that person had a check by theirs when you ran the background check, saying there had been some kind of something with mental health, even if it showed that somebody went and seen a therapist, even if they didn't have a mental health, but still, at least you knew you did your due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think legislation and our government should be held liable. They should.
It's interesting, like when you think of things that can be used as a weapon, the government actually controls access to almost all of it. Like when you think about vehicles, like a car or motorcycle, like you can hit people with those, right, and kill them. I mean, I'm thinking in the absolute worst case scenarios, or even like an airplane, like like airline pilots have to go through psychological evaluations and everything. So it just makes no sense that it's like as easy to buy like a Coca-Cola in a store as it is to buy a weapon that can take someone else's life. Like, how is the government not more involved or more responsible for any of this? Because they somehow have monopolized access to all other dangerous things in our society, and I'm just speaking about transportation issues it's an easy example, but I hope the point is made. Like it makes no sense that, a privately owned shop can do a background check and then just hand over an automatic weapon, for example. That blows my mind.
And again, they should be liable, because at the end of the day, think about this. Going back to the driving test, it asks you, do you wear corrective lens?
Yeah.
So if you don't have your glasses on when you get pulled over, what happened?
Yeah, you get a ticket. You could lose your license.
Thank you. So again, that goes to show the level of responsibility that our government wants to take when it comes to our Fifth Amendment.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's the Second Amendment. Second Amendment.
Fifth Amendment is the wrong one, but that's a whole nother story in itself.
Yeah.
But, in regards to that, so I think they only deal with things that are really important to them. They rather sweep that under the rug and say, okay, you know what, it's not that big of a deal, because they don't want to deal with it, but we have to really talk about it, because it is a big deal. People's lives are being taken because someone decides that, okay, I don't like the color you're wearing. I don't like the color of your skin. You cut me off.
Mm-hmm.
So because I cut you off, now my family is fixing to be without a child, a father or mother, because my skin is not the color of yours, or because I have on a red or a blue shirt. So now you feel you can take my life? No. So no, we have to get stricter gun laws. The manufacturers need to be held accountable. These stores need to be held accountable. But most of all, our government needs to be held accountable, because they're the ones that make these laws, just like they can tap into these different things as far as what we can and can't do. We'll tap into saying, no, this is what we need when we're trying to get a gun license. It should take at least 6 months, maybe a year, because things can change. Your mental health can go from good to bad in a matter of seconds. I can be okay sitting here talking to you, and anything can happen. I could lose my job, and everything goes downhill. And people don't realize that. So no, it's the government, and the government needs to be held more accountable, and we need stricter laws, and we need more accountability across the board.
I think when you were saying that, I was thinking about, like, if we want to have a license to have a gun, we should go through a similar test, like a driver's test, right? And then there should be stress tests involved, like they should put us under stress and see how we react, and do we lose our temper, or do we get angry, do we threaten people? Because if that's the case, that's probably not the kind of person that you want to issue a gun license to. And I mean, what do you want to talk to me a little bit about your specific case with your daughter, and how her life was taken, and where she was at the time, and what she was doing, and what the aftermath of all that was?
Yes. So my daughter, her name was Kylie Thomas. She was murdered on December 1st, 2020. Her sister, my grandson's father, and my daughter's boyfriend at the time. They went to Venice Beach. My daughter had just had a baby. He was 3.5 weeks old. They rented some scooters from Star Bike Rental. The young man who was working in the store obviously was young, didn't understand anything about customer service. Didn't give correct information. Now that I'm going back through everything, because customer service is important. And the bikes stopped working. There was a number on the scooters. The number, I guess he didn't answer the phone, and I'm just summarizing some of it.
So the scooters were like battery-powered scooters, and the batteries weren't charged?
Yeah. Two of them, both of my daughter's scooters stopped working. So they kept calling. He didn't pick up the phone. So they took Ubers back, and then the other two guys rode their scooters back. So when my daughters got back to the store, they were in the store, from my understanding, and they were having a heated conversation or argument with the 16-year-old. We found out he was 16, working at the store at the time. He apparently made a phone call to some supposedly, he tried to call the manager. I guess the manager didn't answer the phone. Then he reached out to somebody who was supposed to be, I don't know who this person was supposed to be, but ultimately, when they came, it was 5 or 6 of them. And my daughter's life ended up being taken, all because of a verbal disagreement. I don't know if they said that my grandson's father and the gentleman, that's what the news articles say. There was a altercation between them, a verbal altercation, not a physical. During the court proceedings, I heard a lot of stuff that was troubling. It was a gang-motivated case. My daughter was not a gang member. Neither one of my daughters were gang members. My daughter was shot in the chest. The bullet stayed in her lung. It never exited her body. The person in the store, he never got charged with anything. Only 3 people were arrested. One of them at the time, D.R.E. Jones, at the time, was a juvenile, but he's not a juvenile now. And the court transcripts, his name and everything is in there. So it's not a secret. So he's not a juvenile. So we don't have to worry about anything happening with me saying his name, because he's of age now. The judge ordered him, he took a deal. The judge ordered him 80 hours of community service, told him he had to listen to his parents, told him he had to finish school, and he wasn't supposed to be able to hang around the gang anymore.
For taking a life.
So he was not charged in her murder, even though he had a gun, and all of them had guns.
All 5 of the young men that came from the kid calling.
Yes,
they all had weapons.
They all had weapons. That was said through the court transcripts. The defense attorney for the last person who was allegedly the shooter, but he wasn't charged with her murder, so he wasn't charged with her murder. He was found not guilty, and he was charged with conspiracy to commit assault with a deadly weapon. So De'Ari Jones, like I said, he was only given those items, but what I found out later during the trial was there was a video, and as I stated a little while ago, that he was told not to be around the gang. Well, we seen a video during the trial, and he was on a YouTube video with someone that was a gang member. And see, this is the thing that's what's messed up with our judicial system and with the DA that we have in office now, George Gascon. You make these laws and implement all these things, but nobody is taking accountability for the juveniles. They say juveniles don't have the minds to be going to prison or sit in jail with these grown-ups. But for me, if you're out there making big boy decisions, you should be held accountable. The second person, Jonathan Singh, he was the one who actually received the phone call from the young man in the store. He took a deal, and the reason why he wasn't charged in her murder was because they couldn't prove that when he received the phone call that they were coming to kill somebody. But you come to a boardwalk and you have guns, but maybe they came thinking they were going to scare them. Again, I don't know. I wasn't there. He received 5 years and 4 months. Anytime you do county jail time, your time gets doubled. So he'll be home probably in the next couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
The last person, Mr. Caldwell, the one who was found not guilty, he was given 18 years. Out of those 18 years, he was given 3 years credit. Out of that brings it down to 15 years. Out of those 15 years, he'll have to do 85%, which would be anywhere from 10 to maybe 12 years. Again, he was not found guilty of her murder, so I want to be very clear. He was not found guilty. So as of today, no one was charged in the murder of Kai Alicia Thomas.
That doesn't make any sense.
That's our judicial system, and for whatever reason, I don't have control over it. What I will say is, through the whole trial, I prayed and I just said, God, let your will be done. I extended, to both families. Through the whole trial, I said, I forgive you. I'm not upset with them. I don't hate them. And I've said that. 8 days after my daughter was killed, I walked into Star Bike Rental. We had a vigil outside, and I told the gentleman who worked in there, who was supposed to be the manager, his name was Kirby Kerr. I told him, I said, tell your people I forgive them. Forgiveness for me, it plays a big part in this whole thing and how I'm able to have peace. When your child is taken, you have to be able to forgive and you have to have peace, because otherwise I could end up like some of these other people and say, you know what, I want street justice. It's easy to go buy a gun. I don't need a background check. And that's where I want to change the stigma, because hurt people, but healed people heal people. It won't do me any good trying to hurt somebody, because it won't bring my daughter back. But when we're out here doing the work and saying, you know what, let's try to change the narrative. Let's focus more on gun violence prevention. Let's try to save lives through different programs with gun violence, education, mentorship programs, support groups. Let's educate the community on how guns can harm people if they get into the hands of the wrong people or if they're misused. I'm not telling people, no, you can't own a gun, you can't, that's your right. But if guns are used incorrectly, innocent people lose their lives. And like we talked about, it's very easy for people to go and get a gun. It's very easy. And my daughter's life was taken senselessly, and my grandkids are without a mother. My daughter seen her sister's life get taken. And to go through this traumatic experience, it's been challenging. It hasn't been a cakewalk. I've had my good and my bad days, but what I've noticed since the trial has been over, through the whole trial, I wouldn't cry. I would get angry a little bit, but I still stood my ground and said, I forgive. But I noticed since the trial has been over, I do cry a lot more. I'm noticing now that I can feel the pain. I was in survival mode. But again, grief, it comes in different ways, and that's a trauma. Grief can come out in trauma. And so for me, it's affected me and my family in a real way, because I was a mother. I gave birth to 2 children. Now I have one daughter. I find myself, I still say I have 2 children because I do. Kai, just because she's not here in the physical, she's still with me. She's still with me. They may have taken her, but they didn't take her memory. Her memory will always live on. And by me advocating and trying to make our community and our world a better place, that's how her memory will live on. That's how I'm able to help other people. And maybe somebody will say, you know what? Because of this mother's will to get up and even forgive the people who played a part in her daughter's murder, maybe I may be able to save somebody from going out there to go hurt somebody else. Maybe they'll say, you know what, I'm experiencing trauma, but it's because that mother can say she forgives. Maybe I don't want to go take somebody's life. Maybe I need help.
It's thank you for sharing that. It just seems so random that your daughter, whose scooter ran out of battery power, had to Uber back to the shop, and then this 16-year-old couldn't handle an argument with your daughter being upset for poor service, that he has to call gang members to come and defend the shop or defend him from your daughter, and then that led to an altercation where your daughter's life was taken. Like, you couldn't write a more strange and just again random event. Like, it just, and the fact that those 5 kids were all carrying weapons, it's shocking.
They were kids. Now, only one of them was a kid.
Right. One was a juvenile.
Yeah, the other one. But again, at the end of the day, I'm going to be very transparent. At the end of the day, all 5 of those, they are kids, because you know why? Those are someone's kids. So at the end of the day, they are kids. Those are someone's sons, and those are someone's fathers.
Mm-hmm.
So they are children, but they're young men. And even though they did that horrible thing and they played a part, at first they were cowards to me and everything else, but I have to look deeper and I have to say, you know what, the same grace and mercy God shows me even for telling a little lie, I have to extend it to them. And people don't understand it. Even my family, some of them don't understand it, because it's like, it changed our whole life. My granddaughter's 11. She says, I want them to change. I forgive them. I don't want them to hurt anybody else. That's an 11-year-old whose mother is never coming home. And for her to be able to say she forgives, there's kids her age that deal with that kind of trauma, that grow up to be angry and grow up and decide they want to go out and they want revenge. But it's because of her foundation that my daughter laid in the beginning, which was her relationship with God at a young age. The verbal altercation between my two daughters and my two daughters, the guys that they were with at that time, the young man could have called the police, but instead he chose to call his boss, who didn't answer. He chose to call the guy who came with 5 or 6 other people, and a life ended. It's sad that a person's life has no value. And I say that there was no amount of time, no sentence that they could have put on any of them, because my daughter's life was priceless. And a simple argument or whatever it was, I don't know what part my grandson's father played in it. I don't know what part my daughter's ex-boyfriend played in it, but my children were not gang members. And in the court records, it did say that my daughter was not the intended target. So it does hurt. It does hurt knowing that my daughter never came home. My daughter was supposed to return home to her daughter and her baby that was 3.5 weeks old. Society is so senseless that if you look at, and people say you're never supposed to look at comments. I looked at comments under YouTube, comments that people would post under some of the articles, and the mean things that they would say. Oh, well, she shouldn't have been with that person, or, why was she out after having a baby? And, just different things. And it's like, at the end of the day, it was a human life that was taken. So all that other stuff was senseless and pointless. That was a life that was taken.
For basically the cost of a scooter rental.
Yes. And because of someone didn't know how to deal with stress. Number 2, the police should have been called. Where she was killed at on the boardwalk, a couple of feet away is a police, I think it's like a little police substation or something. She was killed right on Venice Beach Boardwalk, right across from Star Bike Rental, and there's a police like substation. What I will say though is, and I know law enforcement does get a bad rap, I do have a whole nother respect for law enforcement. My detectives, when I tell you, Jonathan Vanderlee, Warner Carius, my detectives worked their asses off. They were amazing. Melvin Campos, one of the gang experts, amazing. Even the officer who tried to render CPR. Now this was during COVID, Ryan.
Right, December 2020.
December 2020. Officer Harris, mind you, I never knew. This man, without thinking if he was going to take COVID home to his family, this man tried to administer CPR to my daughter. I found out during court, he administered CPR to her. She regained consciousness, and then she stopped breathing. He didn't think twice. So there are good police and there are bad police. But my detectives and the people who were involved in my case, they worked their ass off. And for some of the things that, people said after the case and during the case where they were, upset with the detectives, like the people who were accused of the crime, the defendants, they're not too happy with the detectives. And that's okay. But for the family of Kyalisha Thomas and even my prosecutor, Tim Richardson. Man, when I tell you, the team who tried to help hold people accountable, because for me, I'll never have justice. I'll never have closure because my daughter never returned home. But the people who worked on Kai's case, they did a hell of a job. They did a hell of a job. And we do have law enforcement that still has integrity and that does care about the safety of people in society. And that's one thing that I really want people to know. Not all law enforcement is bad.
The 16-year-old boy that was running the shop, the scooter shop, his first call was to his manager, which seems totally normal. Like, I'm having a problem with the customer. I don't know how to deal with it. I should call my manager. Please give me a moment, right? But when the manager doesn't pick up, you think the second would be to go to the police place down the street or to call the police and say, like, we have an issue here, or if I have an angry customer and I don't know how to deal with it, or whatever. But to call, your private security or whatever that was, that just makes no sense. And one thing that I get from that, and I don't know if it's right or wrong or whatever, and I'm new to this city, but that 16-year-old kid must have had such distrust in the police to not call them that he would be afraid to call the police maybe, or to believe that they wouldn't be able to help him in this situation, that he had to make the second phone call to these people who only increased the intensity of the argument to the point where someone's life was taken. Like that, to me, that just tells you of a system that's failed.
That wasn't the case, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. What we learned, again, during the court process is down on Venice Beach, they have what they call them scouts. So they get young kids and they have them, scout in the area or whatever. And I guess he was so-called a scout, but he worked at the store. But it wasn't that he had a distrust for them, for law enforcement. It was that he just wanted a quicker response. His manager didn't pick up. What I will say is I don't know if he left a message. I don't remember what it was, but someone came later and said he was the manager. And he did talk to my daughter and them. And during the trial, this person did come to court. What we did find, and I forgot to mention, is there were videotapes. So it was video footage from around the whole area. Well, video footage from the store was deleted.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that was in court documents, and everything I'm telling you is in court documents. It's all public record. So the store, there's a connection between the store and the people who had something to do with this whole incident. So yeah, the video footage was deleted, and they tried to go back and delete some of it. There was phone records that showed these conversations. And like I said, for me, I think it's pretty sad when a store and their employee takes justice in their own hand because they know that their employee made a mistake, even though when he made that phone call, he wasn't calling them to come and take a life. He didn't know when he made the phone call, and that's why the other person, Jonathan Singh, couldn't be charged with murder, and he only got conspiracy to commit assault with a deadly weapon, and he got 5 years, is because in the phone calls and in the records, he said that he just went to, I guess he was supposed to be security, or he was trying to just go and diffuse the situation.
And I totally see that, but why show up with a gun? Like, again, it's like, if you show up to a fight without a gun, there might be an altercation, but no one gets shot. If you show up to a fight or an argument with a gun, the odds are someone's going to get shot. Like, that part of it still doesn't make any sense to me. Like, this 16-year-old shopkeeper, he can be like, hey, I've got a problem with these two women. They're really angry. I need some help down here. Can you help defuse the situation? Come talk to them. You're older than I am. Maybe you can talk them back a little bit or something. But to show up to a situation like that with a firearm makes no sense. Like, I agree. Like, it doesn't sound like they arrived ready to kill people. But if you show up to defuse a situation and you have a weapon, the chances of that going wrong are off the charts. Like, you're just playing the odds, and they're terrible.
And it is. And again, not only that, I don't know. I know my grandson's father and my daughter's ex-boyfriend he was her boyfriend at the time, but I'm saying ex. They were there in the store. So maybe he felt threatened because there was two girls and then the two guys. And again, I wasn't in the store. I know from even testimony from the manager who came and was during trial, and he said that they didn't threaten the storekeeper or anything like that. He said it was just like normal angry people or whatever.
Yeah. And
he was trying to diffuse them, but evidently I guess the call had already been made to Jonathan Singh and the other people that came along.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, innocent life was taken, and we're still trying to pick up the pieces. Not guilty verdict. Again, I have no control over the justice system. I just pray that for all of them, that they turn their lives around, that they, know the damage that they caused to me and my family, to not only me and my family, but to a community. There's people on that boardwalk, and this wasn't the first incident on that boardwalk. There's been many incidents at Venice Beach. Venice isn't like people think it is.
That's to say the truth, yeah.
It's not. I remember growing up, and I used to go to Venice Beach, and you see all the, the guy in silver, and then, painted in silver, and the break dancers, and, everybody wants to come to LA to go to Venice. Well, I don't think you want to go to Venice now because you may not return.
Mm-hmm. I think it's changed a lot, especially during COVID, because a lot of people were living out there, and there were a lot of homeless people, a lot of tents. It turned into like a tent city. I read. I wasn't here during that, but it's definitely clearly. I mean, it's not as safe as it once was.
But we can't. One thing it's not just the homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
It's the gang members, and not just at Venice. And I'm not just speaking on Venice. I'm speaking in a whole in our communities. The gangs have affected our communities.
Do you think sorry to interrupt you, do you think the scooter shop was owned by a gang member or a group of gangs? Like, do you think the Venice shops are all owned by different gangs, and that's the way they generate income, and when there's problems, the gang members show up to solve all the problems? Like, I don't know, like, who owns all these shops on Venice Beach? Like, maybe the scooter shop was actually owned by a gang member, right? And then, I mean, is that going too far? Am I going too much into like some mystery?
So, for the record,
mm-hmm.
Down on Venice Beach, and this is, how I guess I want to say like maybe Miami, where they have all those different shops, and, people have to pay people to keep them safe and all that. So there's been research and things like that. I can't give up my sources.
I'd like private security.
But no, it's not private security. It's the gang members that are, working, sometimes taking over the shops, for protection, It's, it's a number of things, but a lot of, that's a lot of Venice, especially on Venice Beach, because again, it was in court. So I'm not just making this up. This was said in court that that's Venice Shoreline's territory, that the beach. And so that particular the boardwalk. So a lot of those shops, they're being controlled by a lot of that. You know, they for protection and whatever else it is. They some of those people, you get people from out of town, you get people from other areas. They may try to come in and they may try to steal something or whatever. Well, they have their protection because that's Shoreline's territory down there. And I was told that they have a Hispanic side, and then they have the African American side. So I'm not a gang expert because I'm not a gang member, but from just the trial, the things that I learned during the trial, it was really disheartening. People who work and make a living and they want to go down there and have a business, and then you have people taking over your stores, telling you what you can and can't do. That's the word I was looking for, extorting you.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't say anything to the police because they're afraid they could possibly lose their lives or, their families. You have to think that for a person to allow somebody to, take over their store or them to be paying some kind of money or pay them for protection, they must really be afraid. And people want to paint it as, everything is safe. But again, I want to be transparent, not just Venice. This is anywhere in a lot of these neighborhoods where gangs are taking over. Hardworking people are afraid and they have to pay for protection and different things like that. And I don't think it's fair where I have to get up and go to work and here it is, I want to start my own business. And then I have to worry about having to pay somebody to have my business there when you have to think about this. A lot of these gang members, their families don't own nothing on the street. They don't own shit. But here it is, you want to represent a hood that you love more than you love your families, because I'm going to tell you something. Anytime that you can put your children behind the gang, so a perfect example, during the trial, my grandson's father, he didn't testify in my daughter's case. My daughter's ex-boyfriend, he didn't testify. And I think it's a hurting feeling because you guys were there. And here it is, my daughter, she was her sister's voice. So what is that saying to her?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Now women are becoming more, they're the ones that's taking the forefront now, saying, okay, you know what, this is what I have to do. Men are supposed to be the protectors. So my daughter, in turn, had to be her sister's voice because my grandson's father decided he didn't want to say anything. He couldn't say anything. But you give, and not just him, again, anybody that's in a gang, you have more loyalty to a gang than you do to your family. What are you saying to your family? What are you saying to your children? You're saying screw your children. So you got to think about this, Ryan. If a gang member's child is killed, if their mother is killed, do you know they cannot testify because there's consequences and repercussions from their gang?
I did not know that.
Yes, sir.
Two things. I wanted to address the situation earlier where you said that the Venice Beach gang controls those Venice Beach shops and that there was a African-American section and a Hispanic section. It almost sounds like a page out of the Mafia, right? Where you threaten people and then you get them to pay for your protection and you're actually the ones threatening them and then they're paying you for their protection. So that's an age-old business that's been around for thousands of years. And that seems like what's happening down there as well. And then I wanted to ask you about the trial. Did your daughter's boyfriend at the time, he would have wanted to not testify at that time because he was in a gang as well, or he thought that there would be repercussions against him personally?
So to answer that question,
Mm-hmm.
he, both of them were gang members. And when you're in a gang, you cannot, under no circumstance, testify in a case, let alone you do not get on the stand and speak. When you get on the stand, you're supposed to be mute, so you say nothing.
And that's like an unwritten rule.
That's a rule. You don't speak. And that's why there's this thing where you see people that never tell. They say snitches get stitches, or you don't say anything. It's disheartening, because how can you not want to get justice for your so-called son's mother? How can you not, if the tables were turned, if that was your sister or your mother or your child? I don't give a damn if I'm in a gang. Screw my gang. I'm going to stand up for my family. But when you're in a gang, you can lose your life for getting on a stand and talking to police about a murder. You can ask any gang member. I'm not a gang member, but I know enough about the streets, and anybody can tell you a gang member never testifies in a murder case, in a case period, because you're looked at as a snitch and you have to answer to that gang, whether it's your gang or another gang.
Even if it's your family that you're trying to protect, or your wife, your girlfriend, and your son, right? Like, that makes no sense.
They don't give a damn, and that's why I say people are more loyal to a hood that does not give a damn about you, because if they did, they wouldn't have you out here harming the communities that you're supposed to live in. Back in the day, they said gangs were meant to be like cliques where, they didn't do the things that they did now. If you go back and look at the history on gangs and how they were formed, it wasn't about what they're doing now, where they're killing each other and doing different things. It wasn't about this. Now it's totally different. It's taken a total different turn to where people are killing people. Before, I remember people would fight. Okay, now people are killing people. People don't fight anymore. Okay, we fight, you beat me up, it's over, and we friends the next day. Now, somebody beat you up, they feel like it's a shame, so now they have to come back and they're going to take your life. And I just think society is just, it's really messed up. But yeah, people do lose their lives for testifying in murder cases. And so, no, my daughter, my grandson's father, he did not. He did not speak out in regards to it, and that played a big part in the case as to why the verdict was like that as well, and that was said as well. That played a big part.
And the young gentleman who we believe was the young man that killed your daughter, who got 80 hours of community service because he was juvenile at the time. That means that he was like 17 years old when he committed that crime, so he can't be tried as an adult. Am I correct in understanding that?
So there was 3 different ones. So De'Ari Jones, the juvenile, so what they did was they tried to say that after the whole everything, he was one of them that had a gun. He wasn't the one that was alleged to be the shooter. He did have a gun. A laser pointed at my daughter, my other daughter. Then there were other ones. He's the one that got the 80 hours. He was the first person to take a deal, and that was in September of 2022. Then October or November of 2023, that was when Jonathan Singh, he took a deal. He was the one that received the actual phone call. And then Mr. Caldwell is the one who was the alleged shooter. He's the one that got 18 years and 3 years credit, which came out to 15 years. And if you do the 85%, it'll be anywhere from 10 to 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the one, Mr. Caldwell was the one that was the alleged shooter.
So your daughter was killed in December 2020, and then it wasn't until October 2022 and the months after that there was even a trial and that deals were being made, and that at the end of all of that, not one person was guilty of murdering your daughter.
No, and they were in fact arrested January 26th, 2022, the day before one of the defendant's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
His birthday was the day before he was arrested.
Just to make sure he was older.
He was old enough.
Oh.
But the juvenile, his birthday is in August. Matter of fact, I think he has a birthday coming up. So he may be 20 now. I think he may be 20 or maybe going on 21. So at the time of the crime, I want to say he was 17. So
17.
So with the DA that we have in office, George Gascon, and that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. But
You can come back anytime.
Mr. Gascon, when I tell you, that man is an idiot. Juveniles, in a perfect example, Mr. Jones, the juvenile in this case, D.R. Jones, because he was not charged like the other ones, that's why he got a slap on the wrist. Now, if they would have charged him accordingly like the other ones, he may have been in county jail like the rest of them. But because they charged him as a juvenile, and that was because of how these laws that Mr. Gascon has put in place, where gang allegations enhancements have been taken off. So if those enhancements would still apply, then they would have gotten more time under that particular law, because it showed through the videos that they were gang members. It showed their gang attire. It showed different things. So it did show they were gang members. So if they would have been charged under that, gun enhancement, there's been a lot of things that George Gascon has just messed up for a whole city with him being in the DA's office. How come you think everybody is getting out? People that have been murdered, their families, the victims' families, he's made it real bad for us. And victims, our rights don't matter. And I'm gonna give you a perfect example. I have one of my friends. We met each other on this journey. Someone in one of the defendants in her son's case. Well, he wants to try to be resentenced. He was already sentenced for her son's killing, but now he wants to go and be resentenced. And that's all because Mr. Gascon. So everybody's trying to be resentenced because they know he's hopefully going to be out of office. But under him, people are being let out of jail for different things, and especially murderers. Victims' families, we don't get a second chance. Don't get me wrong. I believe in second chances, and I believe people can change. But when you're constantly making mistakes and doing the same thing over and over and you've seen no change, then where does that second chance come in at?
Yeah, I mean, it's really disheartening. And I had a podcast a few months ago, and I'll share the link with you. There's a very beautiful man. His name is Mike, and he was a prison guard at one of the prisons, actually, and in the LA County. I think it was in Pasadena, to be honest. And he was a prison guard, and then he was a parole officer. And he was just telling me, how the system preaches second chances, but the way the parole system works and the strikes that you can have against you as a parolee, and how difficult it is to not go back into jail, how stacked the deck is against you if you've even been to jail and then now coming out. But it seems like you're dealing with with people who are going in for serious violence, coming out and then committing serious violence again. Like, it just doesn't add up. And here's one for you. Like, I think if you're 17 years old and you're carrying a weapon, a gun, like, that's big pants territory. Like, if you're 15 years old and you're carrying a gun, I mean, it just makes no sense how you can get away with like a community service if you've been part of a murder. I mean, children obviously are not as well formed mentally as adults, and they might not be fully aware, but I mean, but the moment you put a gun in your pants or in your jacket, you're taking adult-like steps, and the actions are forever. I mean, that's insane that you can be part of a group of people who committed a murder like that and get like community service.
Yes, and through the trial, the defense attorney for the last defendant, the defense attorney kept saying, well, my client didn't do it. In fact, Mr. Jones is the one that did it. And my thing was, okay, well, if Mr. Jones did it, then how come Mr. Jones is still out of jail since you claim Mr. Jones did it? Again, if you put somebody on probation or parole because they're cutting hours, they're so understaffed and so many things like that, they're not even monitoring and really paying attention to some of these people that are on parole, because if you look, a lot of them are getting in trouble again, and there's no accountability. I just don't understand it. But again, I don't have a problem with second chances. My father is a perfect example of a person that can turn their life around. My father, by the grace of God, turned his life around. He never killed anybody, but a crime is a crime, and I'm not justifying anything. But my father, perfect example, turned his life around. So I'm not against people in the judicial system. We've all made mistakes. I have family members, but by the grace of God, he turned his life around. I have a brother in prison that, here it is, Gascon is letting all these people out with murderers, and they're getting these second chances. Okay, well, you ain't gave my brother a second chance. So I believe in second chances, but if you're in jail and you're getting in trouble, hell no, you don't need a second chance. Why am I going to let you come home? Why am I going to let you get home earlier? If I see you on Instagram and you're in prison, what the hell you doing with a cell phone?
Yeah.
If you're getting in trouble in prison, if I see that you're out of jail and you're not in jail, but you constantly keep getting in trouble, and then you come up before me and I'm a judge, and here it is, you've been in trouble, why in the hell am I going to give you a slap on the wrist? So, I mean, it's a difference. We all make mistakes. I'm not judging anybody and I'm not justifying anything. But what I'm saying is we need accountability, and there's no accountability at all. And with with the way society has been with these gun crimes and these gun laws, it just makes it a lot easier for guns to get into the hands of the wrong people and innocent people to lose their lives. Not only that, people in general, because none of us have a heaven or hell to put anybody in. So we shouldn't be around here taking people's lives. And guns are used to protect, not to just go out here and say, oh, you cut me off, or I don't like that you rolled your eyes, or because you had on red or you were in my hood, now I'm going to shoot you. No, that's wrong.
Where is the deterrent? Like, when a law is issued or a law is created, like, thou shalt not murder, there has to be some kind of deterrent against that. So, if you keep seeing these kids commit these gun crimes, and then they go to jail for a little bit, or they get community service, and then they can come right back, there's absolutely no deterrent to stop them from taking up this path. Now, is that because the law and the law enforcement is not coming down hard enough? Or is that because the gangs are so strong that they're maybe even I don't know what, like affecting politics or affecting the way that laws are implemented to make it easier for themselves to like recruit young kids. It really, like, there's a real disconnect there.
It is a real disconnect, and I think that it's these laws that have been put in place, but also these kids, when there's whether you have two parents, or whether you have one parent in the home, it does not matter. You can come from a home where your family is rich. What your children do when they leave out your door, all you can do is pray that they make the right decision. But if they're not getting something at home, they're going to go out here to somebody they think is their friend, and the gangs are going to tell them something that they want to hear. And that's what's happened. They're looking for love in all the wrong places. They're looking up to the wrong people. And so what's happening is they're seeing this person that's driving this nice car, all this flashy money, this jewelry and different things like that. And then that's how they're getting caught up. You know, they say everything that glitters isn't gold. Well, it comes with a price, because you want to be a little so-and-so. Okay, well, my name is Big George, and oh, you want to be, okay, now you're going to be Little George. Now I want you to go out here and I want you to go do X, Y, and Z. So once you go do X, Y, and Z, now you're going to be called Little George. You know, you're going to be my little homie. And that's what happens with these gangs, you know, is they sell them a dream. Just like with human trafficking, these, you know, a lot of these young ladies are, their minds, you know, they're
brainwashed.
They get brainwashed, and they're maybe, you know, been molested or things at home, and then they go out here and meet up with the wrong person, and there's no coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And so people sell them a dream, but are the laws, because I can't blame it on the police officers, because they're only just the small piece. They can just enforce it. But it's the people who are making these laws, it's the policies, it's the politicians who are putting these laws in place that are now trying to make, have these laws carried out. So it's the laws that are being put in place. If you tell me, okay, I'm going to get in the office and I'm going to make sure that there's stricter gun laws, and you're selling me a dream, what can I do? Go off of your word. Your word is your bond. Your word is all you have. So if you tell me I'm going to come in and I'm going to make sure that, okay, I'm cracking down on these people, and, you know, there's stricter gun laws, I'm going to make sure we're doing a mental health. There's some portion on there that is asking about mental health. At least if we get a flag that's saying, okay, yeah, there's been a mental health inquiry, and it shows, yes, they seen a therapist. No, they're not going to get a gun. You know, so it's not law enforcement that's not enforcing them. It's only so much law enforcement can do, but it's the people who are making these laws.
Where do you think, and this might be a very controversial topic, but where do you think the parents of these gang members should bear responsibility or not in this whole situation? Because I know it's hard to raise children. I don't have any myself, but my friends do. You know, they go out with their friends in the evening or whatever. You pray to God they're not doing crazy stuff. Maybe they get caught up in the wrong circles. But for me, if a 17-year-old kid is going out with a gun, and that's someone's kid, like, questions definitely need to be asked of that child's, the 17-year-old parents. Like, and I know that it's maybe not fair to blame the parents when the kids are doing something because maybe they've been brainwashed by another gang member who has the bling and they want the bling too or whatever. But at some stage, like, the parents who may or may not even be actively parenting, but at some stage, like, they have to bear some responsibility, don't they? I mean, did you ever have any contact or communication with the parents of the kids that were involved in the murder of your daughter?
So the juvenile, we went for his sentencing. His I think his mother and some other people were there. They wouldn't even look at me. I never even got to speak to them. They made it like he was this upstanding young kid. They had him come in there and he was dressed all like he was just a modeled citizen. The other young man, they painted a picture of Jonathan Singh. He was in the military. He got out. And his father. I met his father. His father was really, really nice man. We talked. He apologized. In all honesty, his father was super, super, super like, when I tell you, I really felt like his father was really sincere. During the trial, I'd never seen his father, never seen his mother, but there would be people there. Come to find out, his aunt was a prosecutor with the DA's office.
Oh my God.
Yes, I found that out during the case. So they wouldn't talk to me during the case, and I would have my outbursts and different things like that. But I did get to afterwards, talk with his dad, and I let his dad know I wasn't angry with him, and he apologized to me, and I felt that his father was sincere. At that moment, I prayed with his dad, and that was that. I never, seen his dad again after everything was said and done. Then Mr. Caldwell, his dad, I met his dad, and his dad, we talked. His dad, apologized. We had, conversation. I want to say I believed his dad was sincere. His mother, that was a whole nother story. I said through the whole trial, and, I let her know and everyone else know, I forgive, I'm not upset, it's not you guys' fault,
But it is kind of like, this is not going to go over well. I'm sure many people are going to get angry.
So let me tell you something. For me, because I'm going to tell you how you're saying it's not going to go over well, so many people said, what was your daughter doing with a gang member? Questioning my parenting. My daughter was 28 years old. She was living on her own. We can raise our kids, give them the best of everything, and pray when they leave, they make the best damn decision they can. But just like she had a choice, and I begged her to make the right decision, she didn't. My ex-husband, her stepdad, and my other daughter's dad, he went to work like he wasn't a gang member. My kids didn't see none of that in the home. So parents should be held accountable to a certain extent, and I'm going to tell you why. When your child is constantly getting in trouble and you're holding your children up in their wrong, hell yeah, the parents should be held accountable. Hell yeah, when you sit up there and you act as if your child did nothing, when you know that your child has constantly been getting in trouble, and I could see if you've done everything possible and you've been apologetic and you've been trying to do different things, yes. But when you sit up there and you condone your kids, excuse my language, bullshit, then you should be held accountable. Because I'm going to tell you why. If the tables was turned and my child was accused of anything, I'm going to be super remorseful, and I'm not going to act like it was that other family's fault that I'm here in court and that my child was there. Because you know why? We all got choices. We all got choices. And at some point, yes, families do need to be held accountable when your children are constantly getting in trouble and back and forth in jail, back and forth, making you have to keep coming into court and going through the same thing, crying tears, wondering whether your child is going to come home or not because of the lifestyle they're living. But parents, can tell their kids what to do, what not to do. They can do all sorts of stuff. But what your kids do when they leave out of your sight is out of your control. You can wish and pray for the best. You can give them the best of everything. But what your kids do when they're out of your sight, you don't know. You think your kids can change their clothes. They can leave your house one way, Ryan, and go and have an extra set of clothes somewhere else, and it be something totally different, and you don't know.
And a gun.
Yep. And they can be in a whole nother city, and you don't even know. But that's why it's so important that when I was growing up, my mother had to know my friends' family. She had to know, like, hey, who are you? And, knew where I was going and so forth. Nowadays, we give our children too much leeway, and we take them at face value.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're supposed to build that trust and, not be that helicopter mom. But at some point now, I think we got to get back to the old days. And, hey, you know what? I need to know whose house you're going to. I need to know, what kind of parents these parents are and these people that you're going with. I need to know where you're going and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're 17.
Yes.
I mean, your daughter was 28 years old. She can make her own choices about who she decides to have relationships with. But a 17-year-old who's cruising Venice Beach with a gun in his hip or in his jacket, like that just screams like, because the way you've described it to me today, and I'm new at this and I'm trying to get a grasp of it, and I appreciate your openness, but you're basically laying out this division between these young kids that are they can either side with their families and try to build a normal life, or they side with the gangs. And it seems like there's competition there. And like you said, whatever you're not getting at home from your family, you're going to get from the gangs. So, for these young kids in these absolutely formidable years of like 13 to 20, where kids are completely messed up, male and female, and they don't know what's going on, and they're trying to figure themselves out, to push them away or to not give them whatever they need at home, to have them then go into these gangs as, low-level security and give them a gun. I mean, like you said, like the parents don't know where their kids are, or we need to get back to some better version of parenting, but that's terrifying.
It is, and it takes a village. If you're a parent, a single parent, or if you're a two-home parent and you're working and your neighbor, you have a really good relationship with your neighbor, and, your neighbor can, help out as, hey, you know what? I seen all these kids going in your house. They look suspect, calling you at work. Like, it should be like that. We have to get back to it. But now you can't even say nothing to half of these people's kids, because you say something to somebody's child, then that parent is going to want to fight. So
that's crazy.
And again, it's like, it takes a village. We have to help each other, because so many people are trying to make a living and keep their household. And if we don't have more people loving on each other, but again, I understand that we have to be careful, because your next door neighbor could be a pedophile.
That's true.
So you have to be careful, and that's where, again, things get tricky. You have, some people feel, I can't trust law enforcement. But then what about the law enforcement that you can trust? So it's just that fine line. There has to be a balance. We have to get back to the basics. It's not about religion. It's about relationship. We have to have a relationship. What does it say on the dollar bill?
In God we trust.
There you go.
But not enough. No, I mean, even if you're not believing in God, I think there's this. You gotta
believe in the tree. Go and believe in that tree, and go talk to that tree and say, hey, tree, you know what? I'm feeling a little anxious. That tree might not talk to you, but a piece of wood gonna fall, and you're gonna be like, oh, that's my cue not to go do something.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, though. Like, I think there has been, probably in the last 30 years, more than at any time in history, a massive destruction or dismantling of local community. And you could say that that's partly because religion plays less of a role in people's lives, and I don't care what religion it is, but religion does bring people together and builds a sense of community, and that can be helpful. But again, like there's like no one knows their neighbors anymore. No one talks to their neighbors anymore. No one, like when I was a kid, my parents knew all the other families on the street. All of us played together. We all, would go to each other's homes, but they all knew where we were and what was going on. Like now it's just like a free for all, and no one knows what's going on. And then these gangs are just dangling shiny things and stealing these young people's minds. And because of all this shift in society, these young people can take your daughter's life. Like there's a real structural issue at the underlying all of this. It feels like
it is, but again, it goes back to government. There's not enough programs. There's not enough.
Well, the government cares less about us now than ever before.
Are you right about that? But I mean, it goes back to accountability. We have to get back to the family. We have to, the division. There's so much. Look at in politics, the division. You got the Republicans and the Democrats. Here it is. You got people running for office and you're tearing each other down. What are you saying to each other? Yeah. What are you telling these kids? These kids want to grow up and maybe they want to be a president, but here it is. They see this person talking bad about that person talking bad about that person. So what are we saying?
Where are the role models?
Exactly. It's the role models are, whether it's the pimp, whether it's and I'm not going to just blame everything on gang members, because you have, they're looking up to basketball players, they're looking up to rappers and different things like that. But kids need to know you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher, you can be anything, but they want to take the easy way out. And again, we have to get them while they're young, because it's not just at the age of 13 when they're impressionable now. These kids is starting young, and we gotta do better as a people. We got to do better as a people and as a society. If we want to bridge the gap, we got to get back to the basics. And if we want to get this gun violence under control, we have to sit at the table and we have to come to some kind of agreement. And we have to know that a life means more. A life means more. I don't care how many years you give somebody. You cannot replace a person's child. You can give a person life in prison. I'm already doing life because my daughter's gone. That's the time we're doing. I'm doing life. That's the reality. I'm doing life. So I'm the one that really got the sentence. My family got the sentence. We're doing life. Life without possibility of parole. We're doing life. My granddaughter is doing life. She's doing life.
Life without a mother.
Exactly. But thank God for her nana. Thank God for her family. Thank God for the village.
Yeah, I mean, we just need a bigger village and a more compassionate village that can show people that the easy way out is not the right way out, right?
And it's not the guns, and that's why, again, that documentary, when I tell you, you have to see it. So many people have to see it because it's impactful to see those families in there talk about it and give their raw, uncut story. And it's all I can say is it's life-changing, and it's not just a film or a documentary. It's a movement. People really need to see it and know, like, this is real. Yeah, we see it on the news and we see different things, but to sit there and really see it.
Mm-hmm. This is the documentary, Put the Guns Down?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to see it. I was so blessed to be a part of this movement, and just to be able to get my daughter's story out. But to be honest, I'm not even getting her story out like that. I'm talking about the forgiveness component in there. I'm talking about what it does to you as a person. I didn't go into depth in that documentary. It's about the forgiveness. You got to be able to forgive in order to heal. How can we heal our community?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't heal, it's just a vicious cycle of violence and vengeance and revenge, right?
That's right, and that's where the gun violence comes in. So it is a world epidemic. It is a world epidemic, and I think that was the perfect name that Mr. Terry put on it. You know,
Terry was in here a few weeks ago. We did a chat about the documentary.
I'd seen it, but I was working and I was watching it. You know, but yeah, it's amazing, and it is. You got to put the guns down. What's a better way to say it? I don't know if that's how people are, you know, but you gotta put the guns down. We have to.
Agreed. No, it's important. Is there anything else you wanted to address today, or?
We got to get back to the basics, and we got to bridge the gap, you know, and the trauma has to be dealt with. And, you know, I've found myself just, you know, for me, peace is very important. And the only way I was able to get peace was forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even writing and creative writing and just doing different things. And sometimes you got to write things down.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with trauma like that, writing is a great therapeutic process to get it all out of your own head, right? It almost makes it more real when you can put it on paper.
And it does. And so, you know, I have a book coming out, and it's it tells some of the stuff on, you know, the journey, but how I got through it, you know, and that's the bright side.
Well, there must be so many mothers in this country alone that are dealing with senseless gun violence and have lost children in a similar fashion. I mean, that book could help a lot of people get through their trauma for sure.
And I pray it does. You know, it was just my journey, but even though a lot of our paths may be similar, our experiences are different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people need to understand. Yes, I'm a mother of a murdered child. Yes, that person could be a mother of a murdered child, but our experiences are totally different.
You know what? Like, forget about having other mothers read your book. We should have all the kids read your book to see how much their actions affect their parents and the mothers of these people that are taking lives. Like it's the kids should be reading the books to realize the repercussions of their actions.
That's true, and it's called Joy Gets the Last Laugh. Joy has the last laugh, and I couldn't allow my joy to be taken. I couldn't allow my joy to be taken, and I'm not, and I'm you have to have laughter, even in it.
Well, you're a powerful woman to be able to get there.
It was only with God. It was only with God and through this documentary. But forgiveness, I will say, the forgiveness part has it's helped me. But the trial now that the trial is over, I feel like I'm human and I'm feeling a whole lot more. I was so numb. I barely cried, and now I find myself crying, but it's okay to not be okay. And you have to give yourself permission. And it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. But it's okay to forgive and have peace.
Well, without forgiveness, that anger never goes away.
And anger is part of grief.
Mm-hmm.
But just because I forgive don't mean that I can't be angry. But I'm not angry to where I hate them. I'm just angry at the fact that myself, that what could I have done more to save my daughter? And more parents probably ask that question. What could I have done to save my child? Even to the people that are out here committing these crimes. As parents, what could we do to save our children? What could we do to turn this situation around?
Well, with an act of violence that's that random, I mean, it's society at large. It's the bigger questions, right? It's not these minute details or what might have happened that day. Like that, the events of that day were set in motion months or years earlier. Yeah,
they were. So, no.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.